The revitalization plan for Mio, I was working with them on this side of in Canada. In Japan, they are trying to revitalize the village of Mio, both from a historical and from a nature point of view. They're trying to encourage people from Canada to come there and do their family research, enjoy where their ancestors had come from. For Japan and itself, Mio is hoping to encourage people like students to come there and learn about their immigration experience, as well as to enjoy the rural setting and hopefully the development of the Mio area. My understanding is that there was over 2,000 people who had come to Canada from Mio from the 1890s up to the First World War and perhaps into the 1920s. So it did take at least a half the population of the village, and it was because of economic disparity in Japan that people did come to Canada to find the new life. I think a lot of them were hoping that they would come here, make their fortune, and go back to Japan, but that didn't happen. I think they just fell in love with the country and decided to stay here. My motive was just with family research, because my father, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, and beyond that, were from the Mio area. They had reached out to us to see if we would like to get involved with them to do the things for the revitalization plan, but also to do our own family research to see exactly where we had come from. Mio was, and I suppose still is, a fishing village, and my father was born there in 1917. My grandparents were born there as well, and as were my great-grandparents. And my great-grandfather, Benici, came to Canada, to this place here in Steveston in 1899, and stayed here until the interment in 1942. My grandmother, his daughter, came here in 1918, and then her husband also came around that time as well too. My father was born in Mio in 1917, but he stayed there because he was the oldest son and did not come to Canada until 1928, when my grandmother went back and got him and brought him back here to Steveston and to Vancouver. Through the project, the things that I found were the things that I've been looking for at least a half a lifetime, and they included what had happened to my great-grandfather after he left Canada to go back to Japan. We found his grave in Mio, and we found out that he also died in July of 1954, which is things that I had never known. My parents and my grandparents really didn't talk about the events at all. So there was that, but there's also just a connection with Mio as well. Mio is still a very small village. It is actually diminishing in population. People are leaving. It's not unlike little villages and towns throughout the world where the younger people are going to the bigger centers now to find work and not really stay there. So the revitalization program hopes to have the city grow again and encourage people from Japan to actually settle there. So the Kyoto University of Foreign Studies students were doing work on immigration and the work of history of Mio as a place where people had left to come here to BC. And they reached out to my son, knowing that my father was born and lived a little bit of time in Mio. And they invited him to come over, one, to do with the revitalization plan, two, to also find his history, his family history, which he did. He found out quite a bit. I am still planning to go to Mio to continue on that research, and to also help them too, to see if we can pave the way for other people in Canada of Japanese descent to come and find their family history. What I'd like to really emphasize is that the village of Mio is really committed to revitalizing itself and encourage people from Canada to go and do the research and to find out just how beautiful the area was that their ancestors had come from. But for people from Japan as well, the students and people who perhaps came back to Japan after the war, just what the immigration experience was from Mio and how important it is not only to Japan, but definitely to Canada as well.